Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Best People We Know radio show. This is where you'll meet experts and celebrities who share their success secrets with you to help you be your most successful best too. Your host, Deb Scott, is a certified professional coach at Discover the Amazing You Coaching and author of the award-winning motivational book, The Sky is Green and the Grass is Blue, turning your upside-down world right side up. The Best People We Know radio show brings you powerful resources, effective ideas, and transformational tools you can use to educate, inspire, and motivate you to be your most purposeful, peaceful, happy best. So get ready to experience mind vitamins to feed your whole soul. Good change is about to happen. The Best People We Know radio show. Here's your host, Deb Scott.
Good morning to all the best people I know out there, and that would be you. I'm so glad you joined us today. This is a very interesting show, very different, because we're going to talk about finances and what's going on in current events. And our guest today, william-stickevers, I'm pronouncing that properly, is going to give us a little insight into that, and we're happy to take your questions and calls at 347-637-1318. I think you'll find this show fascinating. Looking forward to it myself. As you know, there's so many guests lined up far in advance that you don't want to miss an opportunity to catch the show live or the replay, so please follow us on our Blog Talk Radio homepage. Right there, there's a blue button on the left. You just click follow. You can also go to my website, debscott.com, and sign up for the monthly Mind Vitamin News. It's right there on the right-hand side, and you'll get updates about all of our great guests, and you can listen to us on iTunes and Podcastpedia and TuneIn and all those great places as well. Well, let me tell you about today's show, because I've been looking forward to this, and William and I have been going back and forth on emails, and I'm really excited to bring him and his wisdom to you today. You know, we should be prepared for everything, right? Be aware, be prepared, as they say, and better safe than sorry. And, you know, we always think of natural disasters, you know, be prepared about that. Of course, we need to do that. But what about the economy? What about forecasting trends? What about finances? You know, what's going on in Greece? All the different things we've seen. What does that mean for us, especially with the stock market turbulence the last few weeks, with China devaluing their currency and all that? You know, what does that mean to the person like you and me? Well, William-stickevers has a very broad scope of political, economic, psychological, spiritual, and metaphysical knowledge. Very unique combination of things here. And what he does is he explores systematically the possibilities about the future and how they can emerge from the present by weaving current secular trends, geopolitical factors, and mundane astrological components. So this show is not meant to scare anybody. We are all about positive energy here. But, hey, let's be motivated to take the action that we need to take care of ourselves, our families, our loved ones. And I consider this a big blessing to have William with us. And, William, thank you for getting up early in San Francisco and sharing your shine with us. I'm so happy you're here.
Hi, Deb. Thanks for having me on the show again.
My God, you're always a hit. You've been on the show before, and that was a hit. And I know that this will be very much appreciated for our listeners, and then they can share this with other people that they know. And I'm just going to remind them that they can go to your website if they want to connect with you at William, William, and I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. God forgive me, but it's stickevers.com.
Yes, they could reach out to me there. They could also reach out to me on my Facebook page, and I often post predictions and insights and updates on world events as they're happening, and also predicting them before they happen.
Yep, and you know, I have on the article that you recently wrote, and people can read that. Although I think you need a degree sometimes to read some of the things, so you're going to translate yourself for us here today. Yeah, so people, you can connect with William. I am a member of his Facebook page, and it's easy to do that. So I highly recommend that you just go over there and click William-stickevers' Facebook page as well. My friend, what is going on? I was so amazed. It was like, wow. I was just looking at so many things with the news and this and that, and then you sent me this email. I know your listeners are kind of cutting-edge people. I'm a little partial to them. I'm biased. I think they're the best. And that, this information may really be helpful. So we added a show on for you as soon as possible, and here you are. So talk to us, William. What is going on?
What we're seeing is very much what we discussed about a year ago, that the global economy is going through a major re-engineering, reconfiguration event. And in the early stages of what we would call a death rebirth process, where we're seeing more of the death, the breakdown, before we will see any transformation and rebirth, which is more likely to happen into the next decade. So this is more of a cyclical event. It's been pretty much the central banks and world governments have colluded together to actually prevent this or try and hamper or stall this process. They effectively did that shortly after the 2008 financial crash.
Yeah.
They put a lot of damage control mechanisms in place which are beginning to fail. We're seeing it in the emerging market countries such as China. We're seeing it in the Eurozone with all the leveraged sovereign government debt such as Greece and Spain and Italy and France and Ireland and Belgium. So, and now we're seeing it with the U.S. economy. And we're seeing it with the stock market. We're seeing it with the bond markets. We're seeing it with the explosive levels of debt at municipal, state, government. We're starting to see problems with the pension funds. So what you're seeing in play is part of a bigger process, a larger global re-engineering event that is something that is beyond the control of governments or corporations or central banks, and the solutions, which were never really solutions, but more like Band-Aids, put in place in 2008 will no longer work, will no longer be effective, and for all intents and purposes, the damage control is wearing off, and it's wearing off quickly, and this month in particular will be arguably one of the most important months in modern American history for a number of reasons.
Okay, well, we're here with bated breath, and you have people in the chat room that are saying that they've been seeing a lot of these things. One person, talk to me, guy, that would be Richard. He's been seeing a lot of this on the net as well. A lot of people are talking about October. There seems to be rumbling. Of course, the volatility in the stock market the last few weeks has people, getting a wake-up call. And what you're saying is that the central bank and all of these economic safety features to bail everything out in 2008, that no longer is going to work with what's coming now. So what could be coming? I mean, could America be like Greece? Is there just going to be a global shift in everything? As you say, we have to kind of get through the bad to get to the good. There's a metamorphosis happening here. So what's happening in October, this is going to be something that people just can't, play ostrich to anymore, I suspect.
Right. I think what's going to happen in October ultimately begins mid-September. Throughout history, there's only been 11 times when the S&P 500 has declined more than 5% during the month of August. And when that happened, the stock market has always crashed or gone through a major correction in September. September is the only month in which the S&P fell more frequently than it ever rose. What's more, in the 11 times that the S&P fell more than 5% in August, it declined in 80% of the subsequent Septembers and fell an average of nearly 4%. 7% is a crash. All right, 4%, 6% is 4 to 6% is a correction. However, I'm projecting now that we could ultimately see the market decline more than 50%, between 40 and 55% market loss over the completion of the present market cycle.
Between 40 and 50% in the net.
Correct.
That's like the Great Depression.
That's right. And what's happening here? All this chaos in the financial world is essentially a convergence of both secular forces and cosmological and astrological events that will be taking place during the month of September, between September 13th and October 8th, that is unprecedented. And this has very much to do, it starts on the last day of Wall Street trading before the end of the Shemitah year. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that word, the Shemitah, but the Shemitah, all right, during Shemitah years, which occur every 7 years, we have witnessed record-breaking stock market crashes on the very day of the Shemitah year, which in the Jewish calendar is Ul 29. For example, if you go back to September 17, 2001, which was Ul 29 on the biblical calendar, we witnessed the greatest one-day stock market crash in all U.S. history up until that time. Dow plunged 684 points, and it was a record that was held for exactly 7 years until the end of the next Shemitah cycle. On September 29, 2008, which was also Ul 29 on the biblical calendar, the Dow plummeted 777 points, which still today remains the greatest one-day stock market crash of all time. Now, now we are in another Shemitah year. It began in the fall of 2014, and it ends on September 13th, 2015, which is Ul 29 in the biblical calendar. Now, for those who don't know, the Shemitah year was also called the year of release in biblical times because the land was allowed to rest and the financial accounts of those who were in debt were wiped out and cleansed once every 7 years. The 7-year cycle can manifest as a blessing as long as a nation follows the will and law of God. But for those nations that stray from God's law, the Shemitah can bring severe judgment, often striking in the financial realm of a nation with severe political and geopolitical implications. So, what we're witnessing, what's interesting to note, by the way, to astrologers in particular, is that there will also be a partial solar eclipse on September 13th, on the last day of the Shemitah. And over the past century, there have only been 2 other times when a solar eclipse has corresponded to the end of the Shemitah year. And
what happened what happened then?
Right. Those 2 times was 1931, the beginning of the Great Depression, where the recession that started in 1929 became a depression on the day of the Shemitah in 1931. And 1987, all right, which both events, we saw the largest stock market drop. I think it was about, it was one of the most significant drops in the history of the stock market in September 1987. And both foreshadowed market panics, major financial corrections, recessions, and depressions.
Oh, great.
So, also,
wow.
as we head toward the Shemitah's climax, the Barbell Planetary Cyclic Index, which is considered like the Dow Jones Industrial of the astrological world equivalent, which measures the stability, the economics, and geopolitical stability of human civilization, continues its precipitous downward plunge, meaning that conditions are devolving, becoming more uncertain, and all right, so it's going to descend 494 points from its peak in May of 2014, when the year the Shemitah began, and it will hit a bottom. It will descend all the way down till it hits bottom in March of 2022. And this, between this type of the convergence of the downward slide of the Barbell Planetary Index, the Uranus-Pluto archetypal complex that's been in place since 2012, and the Shemitah year, and also we are now seeing, this is the date of the last 4 blood moons that fall on the biblical festival dates during 2014 and 2015, where the blood moon will be a supermoon and will be clearly visible from the city of Jerusalem. All these augur that things are perfectly lining up for a global financial crisis beginning in the fall and winter of 2015. So that's what we are all seeing here. And what the stock market is detecting in all the volatility that keeps accelerating and intensifying is the fact that the bond markets, or the debt, the sovereign debt, all the debt on all levels is unsustainable, untenable, and ready to implode. And that is more likely to happen in October. So we're going to see lots of crazy things unfold in the world and in the markets, particularly with the stocks in September. And then we're going to see the bond markets, the government bond markets, and the derivatives connected to those bonds that are leveraged against those bonds begin to implode. And that is going to be the problem where the central banks begin to lose control of the global financial system.
Okay, this is great. This is a lot to take in, William. So the rest of us, you have to. This is a lot to take in. So one of the things that I had read about, and again, I'm not an expert like you, but I wanted to ask you about it. Isn't the global bank making some announcement in October about accepting some other currency? Hasn't there been talk with Russia and China saying, that they don't want to always have the dollar be the only one accepted? Is that part of all of this?
That's certainly part of all of it. In fact, the Chinese created their own banking system, which now the AAIB, which 95 countries, including England, our closest ally, is now a member of. There is discussion going on right now about using the yuan as a means of trade settlement for this banking system, which is the competitor to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which both reside in Washington, D.C. So what we're seeing here is that the world is moving away from the U.S. dollar. And the other significant event that occurred that didn't make the headlines but is really concerning those who follow these, those who are very informed about markets, is the fact that the Chinese are doing a reverse QE to prop up their yuan as they continue to purchase gold. And as they continue to devalue their currency, which has essentially become a currency/trade war with the United States. So what they're doing is they are selling the $1.4 trillion of U.S. Treasury bonds that they hold and converting them into dollars and then buying yuan with those dollars. And therefore, they're propping up the value of their currency and also devaluing it in order to make them more competitive in the world so their products can continue to be purchased that they manufacture. Their products will continue to be purchased because the issue really comes down to the fact is nobody's buying products. We have all this capacity, we have all this product out there, but there is the level of purchasing, the level of consumption is at an all-time low. In fact, it's lower now than it was just prior to the Lehman crisis that occurred in 2008.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, dumping the dollar to buy these yuans or whatever you call them from China, getting the value up on them, is it the IMF? If they come out, the central banks, and they say that this yuan is accepted, the dollar is going to go down to nothing.
That's right. It's actually not going to happen in one day. But what's happening now is the fact that the IMF is giving great consideration to the Chinese to include the yuan as part of the SDR, which is called special drawing rights, which is world money. So the idea here is that if central banks across the world want to cash out their U.S. treasuries, the IMF would be willing to swap U.S. treasuries with SDRs. And that becomes possible, and that's something that the Chinese and the rest of the Asian nations, including Japan, would be comfortable doing if the yuan was included as a composite of the SDR. Right now, that's not the case, but as soon as it does, then we are really talking about the fact that the world reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, established in 1945 under the Bretton Woods Agreement, will effectively come to a swift end, and that would mean $17 trillion would start flowing back into the United States, which would basically crash our dollar and basically crash our entire system. That's not including that's on top of all the fundamental issues that we're dealing with since 2008 that have never been resolved. So this would be another major thing on top of the issues we're already dealing with. And the real issue has to do with the fact that nothing was fixed. Nothing. It was all
smoke and mirrors. They did smoke and mirrors.
Correct. And for those partisan political folks out there that believe voting for Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush is the ultimate solution, just remember that it was both George Bush and Barack Obama that bailed out the financial system. All right?
Yeah.
And there's no so both parties are liable. And
I agree. Listen, my feeling, this isn't a political show, but just for the record, I have to claim my chair. Okay, I just think the last thing that this world needs is another Bush or Clinton. But from what I'm hearing you say, the next obvious question to you is, okay, we can see that they never fixed it. We can see that there's a systemic problem. They basically just put a little makeup on the situation to keep their heads buried in the sand so that the world stayed status quo. But at some point, and this is the point we're at, the obvious is going to become inevitable to accept. So what do we do? I mean, we're being prepared. You're telling us we're aware. What is it that you want listeners, and I include myself, what do we do? What do we do to be best prepared? Because we obviously can't stop it.
Well, I think the first things we need to do is no longer use the mainstream financial media as a means to guide our decision making in terms of preserving our wealth, in terms of making any forward or future financial decisions. Because one of the things I predicted was, and this is on my blog, and I wrote this back in the summers, during the weeks ahead, we can expect excessive rationalization by the talking heads of the mainstream financial news media and unprecedented proclamations by governments and their respective leaders, including Obama, to prevent the loss of credibility with the general populace as unexpected volcanic shocks to the global system continue to accelerate and intensify. So, the first thing you got to do is stop listening to Fox News, MSNBC, CNN as the sources of information that's going to help formulate your decision about what you may need to do to protect your pension, to protect your 401k, to protect your money. All right? That's the first thing. Because remember, the moment people lose confidence in the system, that is the beginning of the end, all right, for them. They cannot continue their financial repression that empowers a small group of elite, all right, the 1%, and disempowers long-term the 99%, which is us. So that's step number one.
Okay, everybody, and I see people in the chat room. Step number one, and I'm trying to see, Comig, she or he, I'm not sure who that is, says, thank you for asking this, Deb, taking notes. And I'm like, yeah, me too. So the first thing is, let's not believe the mainstream media because they're going to try to rationalize this when it starts to fall apart. They already are. So just stop going to them because you can't expect the truth when the truth isn't in them, and that's the first thing we need to do.
Step two would be to prepare for a financial dislocation event like what we saw recently in Greece, where capital controls can be put into place, where they'll say, don't worry, your money is safe, but you can only take out $200, all right? And the cash machines run out of money, all right, by 1 p.m., where your MasterCard or credit card or debit card will only work up to a certain amount, where you can only get gas every so many days, where we're going to see also problems with all electronic trading in stores, where we'll see a basically suspension of certain services. Now, remember, folks, people tell me, well, that never happened. That just sounds like, something out of a movie. That happened, by the way, where they closed the banks for 4 days in March 1933. They confiscated the gold. They also did a form of a bail-in for certain accounts that had, at that time, $1,000 and over. Most people didn't have $1,000 in their checking or savings account. And they gave them an IOU for both the gold and for the money for a certain percentage, which they did not receive back until 1953. So we saw the bank bail-in, gold confiscation, bank shutdown for a period of 4 days occur in 1933, where people lost money, and many of them were never compensated fully, did not live long enough to get compensated back. And when they did get compensated, it was at the 1933 level of compensation, not including inflation. So it happened before, and remember, when it happened before, the government was flush with money. We had trade surpluses. We were 73% of the world's GNP, the largest manufacturer, the largest producer, exporter, All right, we were our own. We were the largest exporter of oil. All right, today we have the largest trade deficit. We consume oil. We're a consumption economy. We manufacture very little, only 8% manufacturing. We consume more than all the nations of the planet combined, and yet we make less. We have the largest debt of all the countries in the world combined. All right, the government is both broke. All right, along with the corporate system. Back in the 30s, the government had money, and it was the corporate system that was broke. Today, both are broke. All right, so when people tell me that's just never going to happen, it tells me they are very, very uninformed about what is now in play.
Okay, so I have to pause for a minute because this is very overwhelming, and I'm getting different messages in the chat room here. So, first of all, for the naysayers about this dislocation event, you're saying, look, people, it's already happened in 1933. The banks were closed for 4 days, and not only did it happen and they confiscated, the money and the gold and all that, the United States was a heck of a lot stronger back in 1933 than we are now. So imagine if that happens with the situation we're in now. So that's point number 2.
That's point number 2.
All right. Okay, so I think that we're all sort of waiting with bated breath. So what? Now, this number 2, this potential dislocation event and all that, that could happen in October, or this whole thing starts in October and then it comes soon after, or where is that in the sequence here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It could happen somewhere in early October, but it could happen a few months down the line. I believe the big events will begin to go off where the central banks will begin to lose control, and all emergency measures, including quantitative easing 4, will be invoked. But I believe they can only hold off these type of financial dislocations where many of the banks begin to go under and go into receivership with the government. So, and then
for how long can they hold that off?
Play out. Excuse me?
So you're saying that a dislocation event could happen in October, November, December, January? It could happen anywhere in there?
Yes, it can. We'll probably see it happen in other countries first, all right? And thinking we're sort of protected, and we're going to hear a lot of the, again, the bobbling rationalization from the talking heads that don't worry, all is well, this is just a correction, but that is certainly not going to be the case. If anything, we're going to see what happened around the world eventually catch up to us. So I don't think it's going to happen here first. We'll see it in other countries. Maybe in October we'll start seeing it in China. We'll start seeing it throughout Asia. We'll start seeing it throughout Europe, the Middle East.
Yep.
It'll start spreading like a virus. And then when it happens, it'll happen swiftly here. And I'm not saying this is going to last, we're going into, this is going to last forever, and we're going to be eating tuna, be eating canned food out of caves, and that we're going back to Max civilization. But I do see a period of several months where we're going to live in a world where all the certainty that we've had, certainly since the Second World War, is going to be turned upside down.
Yep.
And so that could last from a period of 30 days, 3 months, all right? Some people say 6 months, but based on what I'm seeing, it's between 30 days and 3 months.
Okay, so William, now Ava's in India. Most likely there won't be a bailout. There's a bail-in like in Greece. We were talking about that. Com is saying yes. That's what we already talked about already. Okay, so what's the next point? Take us, because we want to know what we need to be doing, because obviously knowledge is power. And what are the suggestions or the next point? What's the next point you want to make to us? Besides going to your website, William, to pronounce your last name for me properly, William, I am so sorry. I'm eating humble pie.
Stickevers.
Stickevers. Okay, william-stickevers.com or the Facebook page. I just want to give you a little plug in there because we can't cover it all with William because I know he has another appointment that he needs to go to when the show ends, and we have to end promptly, so I'm just letting everybody know that, because you're calling us from San Francisco time, but people can still connect with you to continue the conversation and work with you from there at william-stickevers.com. All right, so what's the next point, William?
Well, the next point has very much to do with a statement by Damien McBride, an advisor to Gordon Brown, who suggested that the stock market downturn that began a couple weeks back could lead to civil disorder or other situations where it would be unreasonable for someone to leave the house. And that was a very telling statement. That tells me time is short, very short.
Say that again? I missed that. Say that again, please. I'm sorry.
The top advisor to Gordon Brown, who was essentially the head of their central banking system in the UK, suggested that the stock market downturn could lead to civil disorder, other situations where it would be unreasonable for someone to leave their house. So this is a very telling statement.
So Baltimore, everywhere is Baltimore and Ferguson, is that it?
Right. Well, those are all symptoms of what we're going to see spread. The government has done a pretty decent job at containing it, but they only can contain a few areas. Once it begins to spread, and once it's no longer considered a racial issue, but more of an economic inequality issue, and compounded by the crisis and fiscal dislocation events that begin occurring, then we're going to see what we saw on TV becomes something that happens in our own town or possibly in our own city. So one of the things that I'm suggesting is get hard cash in a safe place now. Don't assume the banks and the cash points will be open. Don't assume that the bank cards will work. That's number one. Number two, have enough water, food and other essentials to live off of for a period of at least 30 days. All right. Also, we will see a disruption in the communication systems, at least for a period of time. So we have to have we have to have rallying points where if communication gets cut off, where people can head to. So these are things that are being now talked about in the UK, and we're close enough. If the bank bailouts didn't work in 2008, we would have had massive financial dislocation events. What's now coming is on 20 times that scale because the level of debt has exploded 60% greater than it was in 2008, and yet the global economy, when you factor in inflation and you use real hard numbers, has actually contracted. So what we're seeing here with the markets is just a prelude of things to come.
I'm just seeing in the chat room, Com is saying, medication, I always have an extra supply of my asthma inhaler. Oh, my goodness. So, William, let me ask you this. If we're not going to be leaving the house and the phone and the internet and all that, it doesn't bother me because actually, I love my radio show, but, I think a tech break would be good, but it's going to give everybody a heart attack. Food, water, things like that, but if you can't get to your money to buy anything, I mean, if you're taking, you're not getting any. What are you getting? 0% in the bank anyway. So, what do you do? I mean, gold, silver. I mean, if people want food and water, is gold and silver even going to be worth it to have, or what is your thought on that?
Well, I tell people, people say, well, I can't lose this amount of money. I'm really worried. I say, well, how much is it you cannot lose? You absolutely cannot lose. And they'll give me a different number, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever it might be. I say, take that money, cash out, convert it into silver and gold coins or silver and gold bullion, keep it in a secure location that you can get to in your home or somewhere else in a private secure location facility. All right, that will be your insurance, all right? Because a lot of people just can't pull their money out of their 401k. They cannot,
Right. You're not going to take it all out. You're not suggesting to people, okay, take everything out that you have. You're saying take a portion of what you have and convert that into cash dollars or something like something that is a hard asset like gold and silver and so forth, right? Okay,
right.
Ava, Indiana. I'm gonna read somebody in the chat room. Ava, Indiana, I got it right. Countries are withdrawing their gold reserves from the Fed. I would like to know why the hell they even put their gold into the Fed's vaults to begin with. Gold and silver will not be as good as people think if a real serious crash comes. Did you have a comment for that?
Yes, it will, because the assumption is that the currency system will still be in place. In other words, we'll have more of the same thing all over again. That's just not going to happen. I always hear this from people. It's not going to be the same. In other words, what we had last time was a liquidity problem, all right? And basically they flooded the system. What we're going to have now is a debt problem that's going to result in a restructuring or crash followed by a restructuring of the currency system. So valuations are going to go back to where they really need to go, and as a result, that's going to impact the currencies and the value of things. So the only way to ensure that you don't lose value is to put things in silver and gold. However, that being said, I'm telling people to have at least $4,000 of cash in 20s, 10s, and 5s, because, like, if you were affected by Sandy, you could take a $20 bill, go to the gas station and say, I need some gas, and they would accept that $20 bill, not a gold coin, not a silver coin, but a $20 bill to fill up your tank, all right, because the electronic cards weren't working. So those type of things. So you need some cash for.
So you're saying $5,000 in cash? You said.
$4,000 to $5,000, at least $2,000. This is not to pay rent. There's no landlord's going to come knocking on your door during a financial dislocation if you can't electronically send your check to them. No one's going to shut your electricity off. At least not. The government will put certain things into place to. Right? They have to do that because they could lose the country. If people lose complete faith, all right, and the government completely does a Katrina on us, right, if you know what I mean, where they don't deal with it for like how many weeks before, before intervention occurs, they'll lose the country process, and then people will start pulling their guns out. So what they're going to do is put certain government controls in place and certain capital controls in place. So you're going to want to have that cash for this type of event. You're going to want to have some gold and silver for those who have have a certain amount of wealth that they want to preserve, because we're going to have a currency crisis that's very much connected with all this debt and leverage debt created by the central banks.
Wow. Okay. So here we are. What else? Let's see if there's somebody that had a question on there. I'm trying to see who else has called in, if anybody called in. No, I'm just seeing everybody in the chat room. All right. Well, don't be afraid. We knew it was coming. Those of us, we knew, a lot of people know that something, whether you believe in the metaphysical, the astrological, if you're just looking at numbers, and you have a unique ability to put it all together, and that's why you speak around the world as an expert on these topics, and this is your business, and this is what you do. So what you're saying is, that, look, don't be afraid. Don't panic. We knew it was coming. These are the simple things you can do in the immediate short term. You got to have some cash on you. It's not going to be like the world is going to fall apart in a day, but there are going to be some serious changes. And what you're saying is the idea that things are going to go back to normal, there's going to be a new normal. So you're saying it could be a whole new currency. We could have dollars one day and wake up with Patriot dollars after this, right? Could be a whole new thing.
Right. We don't know how it's all going to play out. Nobody does. But most everyone who I listen to, in terms of who I follow, have consistently great track records. I'm not talking about the astrologers per se. And by the way, folks, there are many astrologers out there that believe everything is fine, the economy is roaring, the Obama recovery is almost now complete, Hillary Clinton will get elected on a landslide, and all this talk is for naught. I can assure you there's a major, major split in the astrological community. However, in the financial community, everyone who has a great track record, trades independently of Wall Street, has has clear visibility on their financials, all right, who's really on the up and up, and again has a great track record on calling what happens next, all are in agreement now. And these are billionaires like Eric Sprott, all right, who are all saying the same thing. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, what day, and what level of impact. They're pretty sure the level of impact will be, everyone agrees the level of impact will be much greater than 2008. And
2008 was devastating.
Right. This will be much greater. In fact, it'll be worse than the 30s in terms of what happens. Nobody knows exactly how the central banks will respond. Some people are even writing now that the central banks will lose complete control of the system. So we're in uncharted territory. We're in the twilight zone. The astrology definitely alludes to that. In fact, I've been writing about this before these very people have been writing about this. We saw major problems in the mundane astrological community where we don't look at people's horoscopes, but we look at the horoscopes of nations and central banks. We look at the horoscopes of first trade charts of corporations, first trade charts of derivatives, first trade charts of bonds and markets. And we see a correlation of major severe stresses occurring to all of those first trade charts, all occurring between 2014 all the way through 2022. And what we're seeing now is playing out perfectly according to the larger mundane astrological cycles that are in play. So you have to keep in mind, for those folks, for those people who dabble in astrology or are a professional who don't look at this data, they won't see what's now happening. But for those who do, it's very clear. There's a correlation between the astrological and the secular data. All right, there's almost like a perfect storm. And what we're seeing now, especially what's happening with the presidential election, the fact that Jeb and Hillary are no longer being talked about in the news, but it's Trump versus Trump. Who's the
Bernie
Sanders? Yeah, Bernie Sanders. Now, you hear everyone talking about Trump and Sanders is a very telling sign that people have lost confidence. People
it is,
no longer
because all the people, and I'm interrupting only because I can't believe that all the people that are leading the polls are non-politicians.
That's right. So, yeah, they're certainly not mainstream. And, Trump is from one extreme and Sanders is from the other extreme in their respective parties. And the heads, the people who run those parties, don't want them to be the nominee. In fact, they're going to pull all stops. But I will say this, folks. The moment this goes down, this will change the dynamic of the race in 2016. What you're seeing now is not even to be factored in. It is going to be a completely different political landscape the day after the big event. People, it's all right. So I'm saying don't even try and contemplate who's going to win right now, who's ahead, who's behind. But what I can say is expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected.
Campaign with this race. Yes.
Right. But it all connects. So what you're saying is, you look at the stars, you look at that Jewish calendar, the Shemitah, you look at the Wall Street billionaires, you look at all of it together, and it's all valid. They're all validating one another. So even if you don't believe in one thing, the other thing is still saying the same thing, and that perfect storm is happening right now. And the fact that the outsiders are leading the polls in the political landscape is just saying people don't have confidence, don't have faith in the system. It's just one more thing. And once this happens, there's going to be a whole new awakening, and it's going to be a very different landscape. But I have to make some more comments, and I have to look at the time because we have to go in a couple minutes. This Indiana, you're really on a roll here in the chat room. So the comments were for you to comment on. I'll just try to put this together. But did William, just not say a currency system will be in crisis? All this, and I can't repeat the word that was chatted here, we're going through is now a result of the Fed's secret manipulation that refuses to reveal with the IMF and the World Bank. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is being set up to fail. And that's any comment on that? I'm just trying to get your comments in, Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of talk now with the way it's all being played out so perfectly. This is all choreographed by the global elite. And there's a lot of evidence for that. And I do not discount that at all. In fact, my contention is that they are going for a massive asset grab. Will be purchasing countries and central banks and taking total ownership of whole nations when this event occurs, when it goes in play. However, the way I see it turn out is this will set off a global revolution, not just in politics, but in thought, in the way social structures, the way we defined ourselves since 1945 is going to go through a complete revolution. So the oligarchical elite, all right, a group that denies and hides its own existence, all right, but is in plain sight, hidden in plain sight, is going to go through their own come to God moment in this great unfolding.
And what's the good news for the rest of us? Is there going to be more fairness, justice, appreciation, respect? I mean, is there going to be, there's going to be good things coming out of this stuff, even though it's going to be painful, this transition?
Ultimately, it will. But we're going to have to go through the death and transformation before we have the rebirth and the renaissance to follow. We're going to have to get through this period, and I'm seeing a period between now, starting 2014, right? And if you look at how things have been playing out since 2014, you can see where we're going, and it hits bottom in 2022. Certainly by 2020, but definitely hits bottom 2022, 2020, 2022, and then things begin to rebound dramatically.
But that's a big space there, William, between 2014 and 2022. That's a lot of years.
Yes, it is. And that's why I'm telling people prepare, telling people that they're going to have to rethink their lives no matter what age they are. The baby boomers are going to have to reconsider that, cushy retirement plan. The Generation X's are going to have to really rethink if they want to go further up the corporate ladder when they're actually making substantially less than their peers, their older peers. And the Generation Y is going to have to really rethink what type of world they want to live in 40 years from now. They're going to want to see things go through a much greater change than many of the baby boomers are willing to tolerate and deal with. So you're going to see a major, what we saw in the 60s, we saw generational wars, all right, because there's going to be a big argument about what type of future we need to have in order to have a sustainable, tenable global civilization. And right now, the way it's modeled, it benefits the older generation, it benefits the 1%, it benefits a very small segment of the population that's aging, and it disempowers the younger population and for those who are not in the upper echelons of the income bracket. So you're going to see major disparity between and fighting, what we saw between the generations, and it very much is connected with the massive gap of economic inequality that's now in play and will be put onto the table shortly after this event.
All right. Well, I tell you what, it's we're at the end of the show. William, I'm putting all right, everybody in the chat room, and whether you've been listening online, I just want to thank William and thank everybody for being here. I think I have to ask you if there's like an emergency call and we have our Blog Talk Radio on air, would you come back? I think we're going to maybe need to hear from you again here in the next month or so. But I want people to go to your website, tell them what that is, and your Facebook page to get the updates so we can all stay informed and be aware and be prepared. So tell people how they can connect with you.
They can connect with me through my Facebook page, william-stickevers, and they can go to my website, william-stickevers.com, and I often blog and make posts on what is happening real time, not just commenting, but also making a forecast or a prediction from it using the sophisticated astrological techniques that I employ to these global events that are now in play.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting a lot of positive feedback in the chat room, and comments saying, yes, please have him back on. And Richard, Talk to Me Guy, Indiana, the different guests, 244, 258, all the different people, thank you so much for participating and being part of the show. And William, I think that the hope that we have to have here is it's a blessing to be warned, and thank you for sharing this with us. But we shouldn't be afraid. We have some things that we can do. We have some time to do it. Most of us that are listening to you and following you have already realized that something's been going on anyway. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to the news stations, and take care of yourself and protect yourself. And it's a process that's going to be difficult, but it's going to have there is light at the end, right? And we have to stay positive, right?
Yes, I think it's very important to stay positive. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We are going to have a better world, a better government, a better country. We are going to work out the issues that have been suppressed, and more of the same, but only worse, is going to come to a swift end. We're going to go into a period of uncertainty, but in that uncertainty, something very creative, something very good will come out of it all.
Okay. Well, we want you to come back. I'm going to trust that you will, and thank you so much, and God continue to bless your work, and thank you for helping us. And, William, we really appreciate you. And everybody, go connect with William right now. Do it now, and then you won't forget. Go to william-stickevers and make sure that you sign up for that email newsletter. Get to that Facebook page. Your posts are great, and thank you so very, very much, William.
Thank you for having me on the show, and I really look forward for us to talk again in the near future. Thank you very much.
everybody. And share this show with a friend, everybody. People need to know, so make sure you share this on social media. Thank you. Go out and make it a blessed day. Be positive. Thank you, William. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Best People We Know radio show with your host, Deb Scott. For more on Deb and her guests, plus her award-winning guidebook to transformation, The Sky is Green and the Grass is Blue, Turning Your Upside-Down World Right Side Up, go to Deb's website, greenskyandbluegrass.com. You can also connect with Deb for coaching or speaking, and sign up for Deb's free Mind Vitamin newsletter while you're there. So now, you're one step closer today to your greatness. We look forward to being with you next time on the Best People We Know radio show.